is very cold outside, and that's why we're not going outside. That's why we're staying inside and discussing Ant-Man and the Wasp. Hot off the heels of Avengers Infinity War, Marvel released the much more fun and lighthearted Ant-Man and the Wasp, and...
We're gonna die. I don't wanna die. We didn't die!
Hey, what'd I miss?
We were just tiny!
Ant-Man and the Wasp was directed by Peyton Reed, and it was the direct sequel to Ant-Man, and it released just a couple months after Avengers Infinity War, just like Ant-Man released a couple months after Avengers Age of Ultron. And honestly, I think this was the right call to release it like this, because Avengers Infinity War was this massive, epic story. Honestly, all of Phase 3 up to that point was, right? You had Captain America Civil War, you had Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2, Thor Ragnarok, Black Panther, Infinity War. This was one of the first movies of Phase... This was actually really the first movie of Phase 3 that was a much smaller story, much more lighthearted story. And I think that was a good idea, because the last MCU thing that was released before this movie, well, this is how it ended.
I don't want to go. I don't want to go, sir. Please. Please, I don't want to go. I don't want to go.
But I'm gonna keep it real with you guys. This movie ain't great. In fact, I think it's one of the, top 3 worst MCU movies. And my issues with Ant-Man and the Wasp really start with its title characters, Ant-Man and the Wasp. Ant-Man in this movie is a completely different character than he was in the first movie. In the first movie, Scott Lang is a pretty smart dude. Yeah, he's really goofy, but he's super smart. He figures out how to break in to Hank Pym's vault by looking at the type of metal the door is made out of and deducing that he can freeze it because that's what happened to the Titanic. He was a smart guy. When there's a problem, Scott Lang can find a solution. The solution might not always work in his favor, but he thinks of solutions. He thinks of ways out of things. He's not an idiot. He's not just wandering around like a complete dumbass. He actually works to get stuff done. And what's funny is in the movie before this and the movie after this, that's the type of Ant-Man we get, is the Ant-Man that we had in the Ant-Man movie. In fact, in Avengers Endgame, he's the dude who figures out that they can use the quantum realm to travel through time. The man's not an idiot. In this movie, however, Scott Lang is a moron, a complete moron. I think he dropped a solid 90 IQ points in between Civil War and this movie. He never contributes anything to the conversation. He just stands around dumbfounded and in awe the entire movie. He can't seem to accomplish anything by himself. His suit doesn't even work, so he doesn't get any cool action sequences. Let me say that part again. Ant-Man's suit in this movie does not work. Half the time, he can't shrink, and half the time, he's 3 feet tall. And only a few times, when action scenes dictate it, does his suit actually work. And this problem never gets solved. The suit sucks throughout the entire movie, and it's a joke that gets old really fast. There is a funny scene with that suit where he's in Cassie's school and he's really short and they think he's a student and he's running around trying to get out of the school and stuff and he's trying to get her backpack. That was funny. Outside of that, this movie really ain't funny. Unless Luis is on screen, because Luis is a treasure. The joke of his suit not working falls flat the entire rest of the movie, except that scene. His suit being broken for the entire 2 hours of this movie is not funny. It's annoying. Now, the Wasp is the character who really gets to be in the spotlight in this movie, which makes perfect sense considering she didn't get her own solo movie. Her introduction movie is the team-up movie, so it makes sense that Wasp would take center stage more to Ant-Man, but would it have hurt them to give her just the slightest bit of personality? So Ant-Man, not good in this movie. Wasp is fine. So we're 0.5 out of 2 for our characters so far, which is a 25%. And that score really does not increase much as we get to the rest of the characters. Speaking of the rest of the characters, this movie has 3 villains. It's really hard for a movie to have 3 villains. It doesn't really work. The only example I can think of where that worked is No Way Home with 5 villains. But even then, some of those didn't need to be there. They could have cut Lizard and Sandman and we would have been good. 3 villains would have been good for that movie. The rare exception, 3 villains almost never works in a movie. Especially when they're all supposed to be treated as main villains. A couple side villains is fine, case in point Thor Ragnarok. But 3 villains all supposed to be treated as like main players? Come on.
Come on!
But yes, this movie, 3 antagonists. Ghost, Goliath, and Sonny Birch. And they all suck. It's so funny when you rewatch this movie and realize that the same people who wrote the villains in this movie wrote these guys. So Ghost is supposed to be the main villain of this movie, and I think she would work out really well as a villain if she was the only villain, because she does have the most compelling story. And like, you start to really feel for Ghost in certain scenes, but then they have to pull away and you have to go focus on the arms dealer, or you have to go focus on Lawrence Fishburne, or you have to get back to some stupid joke involving Ant-Man. Like, they don't devote the time to Ghost because they have too many characters in this movie that could benefit from taking out half the characters. And then you have Goliath, who in the comics is a character that can grow. He doesn't grow once in this movie. They had the opportunity for a giant man versus Goliath fight, and they wasted it. Yes, I'm aware that Lawrence Fishburne is an older fellow. I don't care. Think of some plot reason as to why this man needs to grow to fight Giant Man. Maybe, I don't know, because he needs to get the lab, and Giant Man is going after the lab, and he needs to go get it. A fight between Giant Man and Goliath would have made this movie better. Wouldn't have made it good, but it would have made it more enjoyable. Because this movie is boring. All caps. It's so excruciatingly painful to get through. It is so unbelievably uninteresting that I would rather watch Thor the Dark World, because at least Thor the Dark World has some redeeming qualities. It's got some great scenes, it's got a couple really good characters, and it has amazing music. I don't even know if there's music in this movie, it's that forgettable. The story is boring. Every character outside of Luis, Hank Pym, and Jimmy Woo most of all sucks. But Hank Pym isn't even that developed in this movie because, as I said, they have so much going on that they kind of have to put the interesting stuff about Hank Pym in the back seat so they can focus on other stuff. The action would probably be more exciting if they didn't show all the coolest shrinking and growing moves in the trailers. The Pez dispenser, the lab, the car growing and flipping over the other car, Giant Man. Every cool, like, growth or shrinking thing in this film is in the trailer, so it doesn't make it exciting when you watch the movie because you've seen it all already. It's so insanely boring that when I rewatch the MCU and I finish Avengers Infinity War, I look at the next movie on the list, get really sad, and then I remind myself that it's only 2 hours. 2 hours of my life I'll never get back. But then I look at the movie after that, and I cry. I have not even mentioned the story of this movie yet. The story of this movie is that after learning Scott was able to get out of the quantum realm, Hank and Hope are like, hey, we might be able to get Janet back. Let's try. She could be alive. Let's try to navigate the quantum realm and get her. On paper, this story looks great. But as per frickin' usual with Ant-Man and the Wasp, they somehow messed this up. It's executed in such an unexciting and uninteresting way that I could care less about this story. This is why I hate that Ghost isn't the only villain in this movie. She actually has a connection to Hank and Janet and the whole quantum realm thing. She actually has a stake in this half-assed story, but instead she gets sidelined in favor of Walton Goggins wanting money. I will mention the car chase is really rad. This has a very unconventional third act for a Marvel movie. It's not really about punching each other. It's a car chase through San Francisco. And for an Ant-Man movie, that's pretty clever. It'd be more clever if I didn't see it all in the trailer, but that's besides the point. You've got Ant-Man and Wasp and Ghost, and they're all like jumping between cars. Ghost is jumping through cars. They're like playing hot potato with this lab. It's really cool. And yeah, this is not a good movie. It's better than Captain Marvel though, but it's worse than Iron Man 2, it's worse than Thor the Dark World. It's like my second least favorite MCU movie. But I'll tell you, the next movie that we get to review is Captain Marvel. So that is going to be a hell of a time. I am going to give Ant-Man and the Wasp a D+. I don't like this movie. I wish that more Marvel movies were rotten, because this one certainly deserves that. What did you guys think of Ant-Man and the Wasp? What did you think of my review? Let me know down in the comments below. Also, leave a like on this video, subscribe, click on the bell icon to receive all notifications from the MCU HQ. That's going to be it. Have a great day, guys.